Hello, everyone. I wanted to go over the DAP Note material in your week 3 Moodle module. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to go over is the DAP Note format. We're going to click on that, download that, and bring that up. Maybe. There we go. Okay. So DAP note charting is a form of clinical charting that we use mostly in chemical dependency because it is short and concise and clear and to the point. DAP stands for Data, Assessment, and Planning. Okay. So you have different parts of the note here. The first thing that you do is you write the date of the session. Now, if the session was late, you write late entry and then the date, and then under the data part, you talk about when it actually happened. Okay, so in the data portion, data, there we go, subjective and objective data about the client. So what was the session about? Who met with who? Why did you meet? Did you go over any homework? What was the subject of the note? Okay. Anything that is subjective, what the client says or feels, try to use quotation marks as much as possible. Objective, observable behavior by the therapist. For example, client appeared to be anxious as evidenced by continuous fidgeting with their phone, tugging on their clothes, and lack of eye contact. Okay, great. You describe the content and process of the session. So, for example, we're going to look down here, data. What I like to do here, and you'll see it in my other example, is you need to declare who you are, either case manager, CM, or your initials. CM met with Sally and Joe for 1 hour for session. Thomas supervised. Joe reported that he was sleeping less and able to concentrate more at work, but does not think it's due to starting Prozac 2 weeks ago. Both Sally and Joe report an increase in their frequency and effectiveness of their communication due to their speaker-listener homework. Sally stated that Joe still doesn't seem to open up that much. So here we have a quotation. Joe disagrees with Sally's assessment and feels that he is really spilling his guts, quote. The rest of the session is focused on their differing views of openness and possible relationship. Okay, and you might want to note those. All right, so you also want to talk about, if it's the first session, you declare that for first session, really important. And the assessment part, this is where you make a clinical interpretation. And I find that students generally have the most trouble with this. You are talking about the intervention and the assessment, and you have a working hypothesis and a gut hunch. So, for example, depression appears improved this week as evidenced by. So you can't just make a statement. You have to make a statement and then back it up with evidence. Okay. Joe's symptoms of depression appear to be lessening, and we should have a statement here. Couple has improved their communication style but has not rebuilt their trust and safety. Sally continues to view Joe as not trying and thus not caring. So you're interpreting this. Okay, so the assessment is interpreting this, and you're going to see this more clearly in the next example. And now the plan is just, what are you doing? Always put the next date for the session. Okay. And the time and date. Next session scheduled for 2/3 at 6 p.m. Continue to work on building safety, etc. So you'd also put any referrals and anything that you want them to do, homework, etc. there as well. Okay. So this is going to be really important for you. Think about what you're going to say. Make sure that you have the right chart. Sometimes clients have similar names or the same last name. Okay. Everything has to be dated and signed. So if you're doing case notes on a computer, you still have to put the date there and everything and your initials. But when you actually print it out to put it in a hard copy file, then you're also going to initial everything. And if you're a CDPT, you're going to have your supervisor do that as well. Late entry, if it's not in chronological order and you want to do that as soon as possible. Now, a DAP note is a session note or a group session or individual. It's different than saying Irene Hausinger, IH, called client to reschedule appointment due to sickness. That doesn't need to be in DAP format. So there's progress notes, which DAP notes are usually referred to as progress notes, and then we have chart notes, which is, everything else. Okay. All right. You want to think about your tone and tonality and how the client comes through on paper. This should be neutral. And you want to make sure that you don't have any bias in there. There are so many different abbreviations depending on where we're working. If you're in the military, you probably know a million abbreviations. DOC can mean Drug of Choice or Department of Corrections. So you only use those when they're approved within your agency. Okay. Anytime you have an error, you're going to cross it out and then put your initials on top and a date. If your handwriting needs to be interpreted by an advanced PhD in hieroglyphics, then you're going to need to type it. We don't use things like LOL, the @ signal, the money sign, just regular longhand. Don't leave blank spaces between entries. That can imply that information is left out. If you're printing out the case notes, you want to have it in a numerical order. You can have slang and curse words if the client uses that, and then you're going to put that in quotations. If you won the lotto tomorrow and quit your job, the person taking your space should be able to immediately pick off where you left. So we don't leave notes in the file, post-it notes and things like that. There can't be anything blank in the file. It should be absolutely finished to the point where somebody could pick it off. Also, the Department of Health can knock on your door of the agency at any time and say surprise audit or inspection. So you really want to make sure that your files are in tip-top shape. You're going to describe what you actually observed and not just your opinion of that. Reference identified problems in the treatment plan. Okay, so your case notes and your sessions should be built off of the treatment plan, which is initially built off of the assessment. And then as you go through counseling and therapy, other goals are going to come up as well. Okay. We might have clients that had DSM-4 diagnoses that carried over to the DSM-5, so you might need to use both. And then there are power quotes that you can use as well, using that clinical language as much as possible. We're going to look at another example here. Okay. So here you go. Date. This is a SOAP note, the first one. You might see SOAP notes more in medical situations, especially in hospitals where they might be able to really look at, this is what the patient said, this is what we observed. So patient complained of abdominal pain, observed abdominal lesions and bruising. Okay, so that's what you might see. It's definitely used in massage. Okay, but what we want is down here. So the DAP, case manager, met with new client for the first session upon referral from general practitioner 3 months prior. Reports feelings of increased depression, and she had a quote there, lethargy. LJ stated that symptoms began approximately 6 months prior with her parents' marital problems and stress from her studies at university. LJ stated, I don't really deserve to be here if I can't do well enough, comparing herself to other people. She reported not having anyone to talk to and stating it's easier just to hide it. Assessment. So this is where you're probably going to spend the most time. This is your interpretation, your clinical impression. It appears that it was a great effort for LJ to attend today as she was referred 3 months prior. LJ's depression seems to have worsened with culminating school pressure and difficulty within the home environment. LJ may be a candidate for a medication evaluation. No SI or HI indicated. So this is an example of an OK abbreviation. No suicidal ideation or homicidal ideation indicated. Plan. LJ to continue CBT once a week. LJ given a referral to receive a medication evaluation to determine if a trial course of antidepressants could be helpful. LJ asked, so here's an example of a mistake. Cross it out, put your initials. Keep a log of symptoms daily for 1 week, paying attention to time of day. Next appointment, there we go. All right. And here's the actual assignment. Okay. And there's another example in here as well and some other tips. Okay. The required elements, date, name, case manager, etc. Right. Another example. And then this is the client that you're going to be doing. So in this, you are the counselor, so you can use your initials or say CM. We never use I because who is I? And multiple people might be the counselor for a client as they move through the different stages in the therapy process.